we initially had reputation and permissions together because there's a lot of overlap, but there are a lot of teams working on this problem because it is one of the biggest problems in the space, and it's also one of the things with the most potential and a really cool design space around it. So go ahead and let you guys rip it.
Cool. Yeah, so let's just do a round of introductions, let you guys introduce yourselves and talk a bit about your project. 1 or 2 minutes, just kind of let us know who you are and what you're up to. We have InfiniteGwei from Rep3. We have Emily from Otterspace and Mahesh from Karma, all different stylings on reputation services, protocols, services, interfaces for reputation. So let's just go left to right. Infi, you want to let us know what you're up to with Rep3?
Yeah, man. Cheers. Hi. So, hey everyone, this is Infi from Rep3. I do growth in marketing and a little bit of content and all of that, Twitter, Substack, Discord, all of that. So I do that at Rep3. Have been involved with the project for about, I would say, almost half a year. And what really attracted me to this project was actually my previous experience as a DAO contributor, at least trying to contribute to several DAOs, where I saw that firsthand the contributor experience was really not the best. In fact, quite a few of the people at Rep3 have had a similar experience, right? So, I mean, let's take the traditional case. You do some work and then, you're supposed to, you get that approved by the people who are, the admins or the ones looking after it, and then you get paid, right? And it's great in DAO House. The flow is really nice. But previously, I would say almost about a year and a half ago, this wasn't so. Right. And then again, more than the experience it was for contributors, it was actually more painful for the people operating the DAO because everything was just duct taped together with Google Sheets. They used to keep track of different channels and, just keeping track of manually writing down wallet addresses, copying, pasting that, or even just, creating these CSV files. And it was just a lot of work. Right. So that was the whole aim of Rep3, right? Just make credentialing and, member management just so easy and do it in a way that, the contributors become the true owners of their identity, right? So it's just like you use this protocol, but no one can really no one can take away your badges or, anything of that sort. So that's what we set out to build. And we've got a protocol live. We've got several integrations. We've got a Discord bot that automatically tracks participation in voice channels, gives badges, and we've got a snapshot integration for context-based governance. And yeah, I'll stop right there.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that. Sound like you're describing my work life there for a minute with tracking people's addresses and spreadsheets and things like that. Shouldn't this be easier? But yeah, thanks for the intro. Let's move over to Emily. You want to let us know what's up at Otterspace and what you do there?
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. I'm Emily. I'm one of the co-founders of Otterspace. And Otterspace is a protocol that enables any community to leverage the power of badges for better coordination. So we're building a token standard, a protocol, and also an app to improve coordination within DAOs and Web3 communities. We believe that badges can help communities create better incentive systems, automate permissions, and also, and perhaps most importantly, enable non-financialized governance. And we see basically a lot of limitations in using fungible and normal non-fungible tokens for coordination because fungible tokens are basically all the same. They don't allow us to enumerate any meaningful differences between members. And also, if we use them for governance, that often results in plutocracy. And then with NFTs, we saw a lot of challenges with those because even though they allow us to kind of enumerate differences between members, but because they can be bought and sold, they don't actually allow us to represent any earned differences, only bought differences. So badges are a new token standard based on EIP 4973. And it's a fully consented account-bound token that we're currently seeing used by communities for 4 primary use cases. The first is educational credentials and skills. The second is automating permissions. The third is non-financial governance. And the fourth is non-financial rewards for engagement. And I'm sure we'll get more into those in the rest of the panel.
Yeah, I'll take note of those and ask you about them in a bit. Thanks for that, Emily. Let's go over to Mahesh at Karma. Same style.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Mahesh Murthy. I'm the founder of Karma. We are building a reputation system for governance contributors. Essentially, we are building, it's an analytic system where we track all the governance contributions. And the way we do that is we index all the contributions across various systems which DAOs use. Like if you're a DAO on a DAO house platform, or if you use Snapshot or on-chain voting, or if you use a forum or Discord, all of these different systems are used in the governance. So we index all of these, we assign different weights to these contributions, and calculate almost like a DAO score for each contributor. And what do we do with this indexed data? The problems we are trying to solve are one is accountability and visibility into the contributors. As a DAO, as a token holder, you want to understand who these contributors are who are participating in governance. So we surface all of that information through our dashboard, where you can see if there is a DAO which has delegates, you can see all these delegates in the dashboard, or all the contributors in the dashboard, and all their stats about what their participation rate is, how many proposals have they voted on, how have they voted. So we go in depth into all these contributors and how their contributions are. Eventually, the goal is to help automate a lot of these processes in a DAO. So today we have visibility and accountability, and in the future we want to work with Otterspace or these badging solutions and mint badges based on the reputation of a contributor, and give them governance power based on their contributions. Instead of people with the most number of tokens getting governance power, what if people who are contributing get governance power? So those are, to do such things, you need to analyze and track these contributions. So those are all some of the problems we are trying to solve.
Right on. Thanks, Karma. And I'm interested in how, like you mentioned, your product in particular integrates with others, so being able to pull badges in. It's one of the questions I have about reputation solutions. It's like, which reputation am I subscribing to? Or, is it like there must be only one kind of situation, or do you guys play nice with each other to build aggregate reputation? But we can get into that a little bit. We have Humpty, who hopped on a little late, but he previously was with Orange Protocol. I know you've had some changes lately. Humpty, we're just in the introduction part, so if you could just let us know what you're up to, what you're working on in the reputation space lately. Just give us a little 1 to 2 minute intro, if you would, and we can get going from there.
Hey, thanks so much for having me up here. I'm excited to be speaking here at DAO House, and also with all of these amazing builders. I think the space in which that we're building is quite important. I actually jumped in here 5 minutes before it started, but I think my hand got
missed you. Sorry about that.
It's fine. But yeah, no. As for myself, I've been in the space of Web3 primarily as, I'd say, a speculator since like late 2015, maybe early 2016. Didn't start building that because of the local meetup groups that I attended. I started really taking an interest in 2017 and joined some of my local meetups to go beyond speculation. And together with some of the people that I met there, I launched my first project, which was a project that was launching validator nodes across a variety of delegated proof-of-stake networks. And at that time, the tools that exist today didn't exist then, in terms of being able to bring communities together and empower them through governance and sharing of these financial incentives and so on. So we have to build a lot of these things from scratch. In 2020, that business was acquired, and so I began my search for something new, something revolutionary, and it's when I learned about decentralized identity. And I went to the only people I knew at that time that were building in that space and had been talking about it for a long time, and that's Ontology. Ontology is this project that since 2016 has been a member of the Decentralized Identity Foundation and has built quite a robust stack of technologies from their own DID method, which is called OntID, their identity wallet, and a reputation protocol primarily focused in DeFi, a DeFi protocol that bridges both identity and reputation to be able to unlock under collateralized markets. So I went to them and I was like, I'm curious, I want to learn more about this. And it's when I joined them as a contributor and have been helping them to engage the community, both the people that are on their layer one blockchain, but also developers who want to build that tech stack. Orange Protocol was an iteration of that reputation protocol that I mentioned previously, which was focused on being something that supported the DAO community. Because that I think a lot of people have mentioned this here, and there's no surprise. There's a lot of gaps between contributorship and ownership and governance and incentives and so on. So we basically iterated off of the DeFi reputation protocol and created a DAO reputation protocol. And really, at that time, it was the first to take on this idea of permissioning communities, allowing you to curate communities based on interest, being able to provide better incentives to communities based on their participation and activity throughout, a variety of different applications and platforms, and governance, creating a much richer experience beyond plutocratic governance. And so we went about doing that by aggregating data. So, instead of going and making these biased, arbitrary attestations or calculations of what reputation means, we took in data and had the data really kind of become the metric by which reputation could be built. And so, that's something that, up to MCon, we were building and collaborating with a bunch of really incredible developers to create that type of experience. Since then, as you mentioned, there's been a couple of changes that are happening primarily on a personal level, where we saw a demand from the community for the application side to allow for it to scale out versus the protocol side. And so together with my team, we're actually building out the application side of what we've already built. So to create a better user experience, user interface for being able to work with this data to create these reputation attestations. So that's a little bit about myself.
Cool. Thanks, Humpty. So reputation attestation is something that I've heard said a few times. So okay. So the way I want to play this, I've been working in DAOs for about a year, primarily in a DAO house, right? And so my reputation, some people in DAO house know me. Reputation is typically kind of this ethereal concept that's just sort of floating out there. And then right now I have 4 people who are working in reputation space and kind of taking it out of the ether. I mean, even though we're on Ethereum, taking it out of the ether and making it a little bit more tangible, right? So if I want to have the best reputation I can, or how do these tools serve me? I guess, can you guys tell me how I could use your tools to improve my reputation or transmit my reputation? Is the way that I'm thinking about it flawed? Is it about having a good or bad reputation, or is it more about just having my contributions documented, kind of like my resume or something like that? Would one of you want to just kind of, looking at me in my position, how would your service like why would I want to use it? You know, we have a lot of people who are in DAOs, you know, listening, and you know, this is DAOcember, so it's like for the average DAO worker, why would I want to use your product? Like, how can you help me?
Can I take that question? I have before I answer the question, I want to give a 1 minute overview of at least how we think about reputation.
Yeah.
Maybe set context and then explain how we are trying to solve it.
Yeah, please.
So my thought, I've been working on the reputation space for a while, and the thoughts have definitely evolved. So initially I used to be like, okay, this person has X reputation in however you represent it in a DAO, but more and more the way we are thinking about it is your reputation is very specific to the use case. So Matt is in DAO House DAO, but you don't have this one like constant reputation. It really depends on what you're trying to, like, what is your reputation being used for. If the reputation is used for compensating you, like your reputation should be looked at in one way, versus if it is being used for, let's say you want to build up your reputation as a thought leader in DAO, like for the things that are required for that is not the same. So it's very use case, your reputation is very use case specific, and it depends also on like who is looking at it and for what they're looking at it. At least that's how we look at it. It's not a fixed one number or one way to look at it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, like resumes come to mind. You know, if I'm applying for a job or going into whatever, you know, maybe I'm trying to get booked for public speaking, or maybe I'm trying to get a desk job, I would present myself differently in those situations. You know, my resume would be kind of my reputation. I would present myself in a different way. Is that?
Exactly. Yeah, it's so different. Like what you need is very different for each role you play. And that's how we are like that's how we think about it now, and that's how we are kind of like evolving our product to be very like a dynamic system.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are a delegate in a DAO, like your reputation is dependent on like how you vote, like what proposals you like abstained, or what proposals did you like vote yes or no on, like what happened there, what are the kind of decisions you're making. That's what, like, from a delegate point of view, that's your a way to look at your reputation. And if you're another type of contributor, like those data points make no sense at all. So that's how we think about it.
Okay, that makes sense. So one thing I'm noticing with my conception of reputation is it's like there's two sides of it. One part is completely out of my control, or, you know, like I definitely have influence, but what other people think of me, or what people are saying about me, right? So there's this reputation floating out there that other people are building, but then I, of course, can present myself in a certain way. I can show up and be like, hey, here's the data I'm presenting about myself, so this is my reputation. Hey, Humpty, you got a little background noise coming in through. Could you mute when you're not talking?
Oh, sure.
So two sides of it. So I could see that, like thinking of it like a tool that I could bring to a situation to present myself in a certain way. Is that possible for somebody else to influence my digital reputation? You know, like could I get a bad reputation, or if I really screwed somebody over in some way or dropped the ball, would that show up in my reputation in some way? Like, how do those things kind of happen? Or is it more like I get to put a nice front on on everything?
That is an extremely interesting question. So by default, any tools which we build, like we are a tooling company for reputation. Like I don't think we should have the permission to just show anything and everything. Like it should always be opt-in. If Matt thinks These are some of the things which I don't want to show. If we start showing such things, it just creates a bad taste.
So more user controlled there, but then there's also the layer of the DAO, right? Because the DAO is deciding what's important for the rankings. Like your interface kind of lists all the people in the DAO and what they consider important. So that has a little influence on your reputation.
True. Like at least the way Karma works is DAO is ultimately our customer. So if the DAO says this is how we want to evaluate the contributors in our system, that is what we build, because that's what DAO thinks is best for their token holders and for everyone to evaluate the contributors.
Great. Okay. So Emily, I'd like to hear like how that occurs to you from Otterspace's point of view. I know you're talking about giving badges. We've got a badge set up for DAOcember so the people who are here can get a badge. It reminds me of a POAP, like proof that I was here, proof that I did something. But I'm getting the impression that from your point of view, that fits into my reputation profile in some way. So what would you say to me as a DAO worker who's, trying to build my reputation, or maybe concerned about accumulating a bad reputation, anything like that? Like, how does Otterspace relate to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess I have a bit of a hot take to kick us off, which is I don't think reputation is really an objective, real thing. And as such, we don't really think of ourselves as building a reputation tool per se. So I really think that reputation is in the eye of the beholder. It's something that doesn't exist in the world, but it's something that happens at the point of interpretation. So I might look at your CV and I might make some judgment about your reputation, or what kind of a person you are, if you're good at, I don't know, token engineering or not. So we think of badges really as a tool for coordination and to kind of enable that interpretation to happen, but not to actually contain within them any kind of reputation per se. So you mentioned the kind of DAOcember badge. So badges are really a way for communities to, issue specific rewards or achievements, or they can even represent a role that you hold. So they could, you could have a badge that says you are the community lead of DAO House, in the period of, September 1st to December 31st. Now, is that badge your reputation? Maybe you can think of it that way. But I think the reputation part comes when someone looks at your badge collection, maybe it's an AI that, computes your badge collection and makes some judgment about, are you, do you have experience in community leadership, or are you generally a reliable person? Are you a human, perhaps? So we think of badges really as this coordination tool between different entities, the holders of the badges, the issuers, the communities that issue them, and then the tools and people that kind of interpret what those badges mean. So it's kind of, I don't know if I really answered your question, but I think we kind of think about it in a bit of a upside down way.
Well, no, I think that what you said is particularly poignant about reputation happens in the moment of interpretation, a judgment, really. Like if I think of others' reputations, really I only have my conception of their reputation, which is really my judgment of them based on either my own experience or what other people have said they've experienced, or what some kind of reputation system says about them. So it ties in with what Mahesh said about the reputation being context specific, like it kind of doesn't matter if I'm, like good at leading groups of 30 people through breathing exercises if you're looking for somebody to stop the plane from crashing, right? It's like my reputation precedes me is, a statement that we hear all the time. So it's like, what is preceding me?
Yeah, I think also in that sense, it's important for there to be a multitude of different layers of inputs into that reputation calculation. So we really think of, when we imagine like where we expect the space to be in 5 or 10 years, we imagine there's going to be a bunch of different algorithms computing scores specific to a context. Like, is this person going to be a good delegate, or is this other person, likely to be a human, or things like that, and that they're going to take in a bunch of different inputs from all of these systems, whether it's karma or badges or other things.
The reputation of your reputation system becomes relevant also.
Yeah, that's true.
Like the one thing which has kind of worked well for us is as long as when we go to the DAOs and talk to them, we say we do all the heavy lifting of like presenting the data, and we will leave it up to you how to interpret it. They really like it because they don't want like a tooling company to like form opinions of like what reputation should be. So we really are like the tooling will do all the hard work of like indexing and analyzing, doing this, and like present it in a form where token holders or the DAOs can actually make the decision and interpret it however they want.
Okay.
Like for example, if we kind of integrate with Otterspace and show like here are all the Otterspace like badges this person has, right? The DAO can say like this is how much we value those badges, and then they can like say this is how like this person's reputation is, or we want to enable this person to do these things based on those badges.
Right.
So
sorry, I interrupted you. Did you have one more?
no, that's what I wanted.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm kind of getting the terrain here. It's like collecting data and assembling it so that we can see it is a big part of the value add you guys are providing, where I have a way to put these things in front of myself and other people to collect them, aggregate them. Infi, that reminds me of some of the things that you said, where it sounds like what you're tackling is kind of the data wrangling side of it, where there are a lot of pieces to a reputation, but then also your profile within an organization, getting paid and having things move through proper channels. With the conversation so far, like how do you see what you're building with Rep3 fitting into this reputation terrain that we're describing here?
Yeah, so I think the points raised by Emily and Mahesh are pretty valid, right? So we're personally of the opinion that something that represents your work does not equal your reputation. Reputation is, it's something that's derivatory, right? And so how we think about it is that, in fact, reputation is something that is contextual, is consistent and is continuous, right? So contextual means that, Mahesh already spoke about that, right? Like, what perspective are you looking at someone's reputation, and that decides the, whole outlook towards it, right? The second thing is consistency or the lack thereof, right? Like me doing something once or twice, does not really make a difference. But if there's something that I'm doing consistently, right? Like I'm consistently showing up for meetings, or in fact, even just inconsistency, right? Like I show up and then I don't show up. So that's another part of it. And the third part is continuity, right? Like essentially, reputation is something that is updated almost real time. I would say like it literally changes by the second, right? Like our relationships with organizations are dynamic. They're never static, right? So that's how we look at it. And so what this means, going back to your original question, you worked in DAOhouse for a year. Why should you use Rep3, right? What do you get from it, right? So as contributors ourselves, there's three key features, right? That three reasons why you should use Rep3. The first and the foremost is, well, it's easier to get your contribution noticed and get paid. So usually, we do something and then, pick up a task from a task board, and in Discord, I'm like, guys, I've done this, check it out. And I DM them, and once they check it out, they're like, okay, fine, we're evaluating it, paid soon. And so then there's this whole following up. So there's none of that. You go on the Rep3 platform, you raise a contribution request, and literally that's about it. And from the DAO admin's perspective, it's really easy, because now instead of managing DMs and responses to Airtables or whatever, you just have this, all the contribution requests in one neat place. You're like, okay, fine. Every 2 days, I open the contributions, I check it out, sorted by guild. So, okay, someone else sees dev contribution, someone else sees something else, and we do it. So the first and foremost is you can request contribution and you get paid easily. There's no back and forth, right? The second thing is Rep3. In fact, so basically how it works is, I'll just take like 10 seconds to explain this. So imagine you are like, you are like the soil, right? And your participation in every community is like a tree, right? And so just the way no two trees are the same, similarly no two communities are the same. So how Rep3 works is, you get like a membership badge for each community, right? Which is dynamic, upgradable, all of that. And then under those membership badges are, a plethora of child badges that are infinitely customizable by the communities. So it's like membership badges are the tree and child badges are like the branches and the leaves, right? So we have this like really composable system where communities can sort of, mold themselves and, use Rep3 how they want to. For example, what we're doing with DAOcember is that, okay, I just spoke with Dekan, we're like, okay, we can do this thing. Attendees of DAOcember get a membership badge called, let's say, DAOcember, right? But then we have all these customizable badges where we can have one for people who attend technical talks. We have another for people who attend panel sessions. We can have another set of badges only for the speakers, right? And so there's this, whole level of customization that reflects in real time. So what you can also do, what communities do, is, okay, fine. If you're inactive for 2 months, we sort of just level you down, right? And then your NFT is going to look a different way, right? Or if you're really active, or if you're leveling up, your level goes up and you get access to new things. So basically, like the long and short of it is that, not only can you get like paid easily and like request contributions, but it's also a dynamic, living and breathing object that reflects your relationship with the community in real time, whatever that may be. And then the third thing, which is most important, is that it enables true pseudonymous economy. For example, earlier, if I'm a DAO contributor, I would need to dox myself, to tell what I've worked on, so on and so forth, because my DAO contributions, maybe some people don't think they're valid enough, right? Because I'm reporting them. But if I can, spin up any account, and if I can these credentials, that brings together all the little things I do, an article here, a tweet there, a commit over here, right? And it does all of that, then I don't actually need to dox myself. So yeah, I hope that answered your initial question.
Yeah.
And also that's also how it goes. Yeah.
Well, I'm starting to get a feel, of why I would want to use these tools, and almost to the point where I want DAOs that I participate with to be using them, saying like, hey, what's your relationship with reputation protocols? Do you have a sophisticated way to track my contributions, but then also can I see like how you're holding yourself accountable and things like that? It's making a lot of things visible. When I started this conversation with you guys, there's part of me that's afraid that it's like, is this just like my Yelp profile where somebody can give me a bad rating and now I forever have to deal with that going forward? Or is it like my credit report, but nothing ever falls off my credit report? Who can write on it? But kind of in the spirit of decentralization, it's more organic. I really like that soil metaphor. like I'm going around with that fertile soil that things are going to grow out of, and then planting seeds with all of my interactions, and I guess implies there would be composting too. If I do make a mistake, that it would not necessarily destroy me, right?
That was really funny. I just wanted to add one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're opinionated on it. So our whole approach is, there's like whole membership badge, which is like the main meta, and there's child badges. So our whole approach is that there are several levels to a membership badge, right? There could be a level for inactivity, there could be a level for, level 1, level 2, level 3, whatever. But then there is a level 0, right? Which means that the badge has been voided, right? So essentially, how this works is, if I'm a part of DAO House and I do a bunch of work, I have a membership badge, and I keep getting, these child badges which are with me, which reflect the work I've done, so on and so forth. However, if I do something that really goes against the community, they can decide to move my membership to level 0. So now what that means is that all the work I've done is still there. My child badges are still there, right? I've done the work and it's there, and they can't take it away from me. It's just that my badge says that, this person has been voided. That's about it, right? So I think that's like the perfect balance between, ensuring that communities can fully express the relationship with their members, but then also limiting them from, giving those sort of, like negative reputation credential, like, oh, you've done something bad. So that's our approach to it.
And there's a parallel already with traditional work. If I get fired, I kind of, like, the job application will be like, why did you leave? What happened? Or if I have a felony or something. But with you describing that, it's like adding a little more nuance. It's like, okay, this relationship fell apart, and they can signal that. But at the same time, here are all my contributions, and then I have my chance to, explain why that happened versus just I got fired. It's almost like it's like a higher resolution on reputation, I guess, is what we would be aiming for here, to have the truth the truth more accurately represented. Okay, so as a DAO worker, I'm kind of feeling a little bit more trusting of this reputation space, and almost to the point where I'd want to participate in DAOs that have reputation processes going on. With what you said, Infi, with the operations aspect, it sounds like it would just be a much more pleasant experience to have a DAO that's operating with some of those tools, so that I can stay pseudonymous, get paid easily and whatnot without a lot of overhead. Humpty, I'm curious, you mentioned earlier contributorship and ownership, but it wasn't clear to me with ownership. Is it like the individual owning the contributorship? Like, given what you've heard so far, the terrain that we've kind of painted with reputation, how do you see all that fitting together with the things that you've been building?
Hey, sure, thanks. I really like what everybody's been saying here. I think I agree with a lot of it. The one thing, excuse me, just getting over pretty bad cold. The one thing that I would say in terms of ownership and reputation and contributions is the ability, and I think some of this was already mentioned in some degree, the ability for someone to present themselves in kind of the way that they'd like to in an organization, while still preserving an element of privacy to that identity. So one of the things that I think has become also more popular alongside reputation, or probably even preceding it, was decentralized identity, right? So the ability for someone to own their identity beyond, just maybe in the traditional sense, with what we were familiar with previously in Web 2, or maybe even through some of the more primitive identities in Web 3, such as our wallets. When we think about the ownership of our identity, there are standards that allow for us to be able to build out, and record our contributions in a way that is private, secure, and that I think many of us here might be familiar with that are decentralized identifiers and verified credentials. There is a need for these attestations, for this information to have a layer of privacy included into it. And so one of the things that we have done from the beginning, and in collaboration as well with other DID builders in the space, is integrated that to the protocol, right? So using DIDs to allow for someone to not just build out, and record these attestations, but to do so in ways that are self-sovereign, and to do so also in a much richer fashion, where someone who potentially has multiple identities, which I think many of us may, I certainly know I do. I have some that I use for my degenerate NFT consumption. I have some that I use for my DAO governance, and I have some just for signing, being a signer on a multi-sig. I choose to separate my identities because, that's the way that I choose to present myself in each of these use cases. But when it comes to building out my reputation, I want to be able to create a composite of that experience depending on that context, right? The context, I think, is a word that I'm really happy to hear being used a lot more frequently when we talk about reputation. So depending on the context, there may be a need to present myself as someone who is actively participating in governance, but also in a variety of different ways, across the DAO ecosystem. Maybe I have a wallet that I choose to use only for, picking up bounties and receiving my my remuneration for that. I may have another one where I'm contributing to DAOs through some sort of like public good platform, like Gitcoin grants, for instance. So to be able to aggregate that information and to be able to share that information and to be able to record a reputation on that, I think is important. And so that's certainly one of the things that I think about when I consider ownership of our identities and ownership of our contributions and ownership of that reputation. And again, primarily driven by this idea of like privacy.
Yeah, the image that came to mind is like playing Texas Hold'em, where I have my two cards down, and maybe I know I have aces, and then I make a bunch of bets, and then there's a moment where I have to prove it, right? And maybe I did have pocket aces the whole time, and maybe I didn't, but at that moment, it was like I was able to combine privacy with the reveal at the end, but there's a moment where all the people at the table need to see what I actually have. And so I guess what you're saying is being able to limit who I show it to, right? I don't necessarily have to have that I have pocket aces broadcasted to the whole world the whole time. So more context specific. But then I would also have privacy on like not so flattering aspects, right? Like if I got that level 0 badge from my DAO, but I guess then if I were going to enter some agreement with you, I might ask to see some of those things, but it would be your choice to show it to me.
Right, exactly. That's the consensual piece of it all, isn't it? It's the ability to choose whether I want to participate in this game and to be able to share that information with you. So you have your set of rules and I have my set of rules. And as long as those set of rules match, then we can play the game together, right? So in this case, and in the way that we at Orange Protocol had been setting up the framework for basically what we were calling data collaboration, is in the ability to aggregate this data from a variety of different sources, right? Web3, or I should say on-chain and off-chain sources, to be able to allow DAOs to be to model, these reputation algorithms that participants in that ecosystem and their DAOs could interact with and participate in and generate these non-transferable NFTs that then signaled their reputation, right? And quote unquote, and I agree with Emily in terms of the word reputation. I don't think that that specifically is the right word for it, but it's the word we're using now because I think it's the best word we have for it. But in terms of someone's reputability in an organization, you as a DAO organizer have the ability to create a system, a game in which participants need to fulfill certain tasks, right? And these tasks are only fulfillable if they've reached a certain level in your organization through some kind of meaningful participation that's contextually important to you. And as a contributor, if I want to play that game, right? Because I think DAOs just are a bunch of different games put together. It's if I choose to play one specific game within a DAO, and I would need to consent to that information being shared and to basically generating my reputation in that way.
Yeah, I like that you bring up games. We often describe what we're doing as coordination games. I'll be leading a piece next week, Intro to Coordination Game Design, where we go into the definition of game. One of them is the game must be entered willfully, which is a little different than willingly, but you kind of have to want to be in there. And so if we are playing this real world reputation game, a lot of it is non-consensual, if you think about it. I don't have the choice to participate or not. So, and when you describe, I gotta get Mahesh back up here. It's like I'm getting this image of like all these little playing pieces. Like if it is a game, like if I need to collect this, I need to collect that to get to the next level of the game. I need a red gem and a blue gem. We're familiar with this idea of levels and gating, and it's kind of amazing to me how well the game metaphor maps onto what we're talking about here, both with DAOs and with reputation. Because if I'm a DAO and I want to invite you into my coordination game, I essentially have a standard. I have a quest. I'm like, yeah, well, you need to show up with this threshold met. You need to have I have the RPG background, so I'm like, you have to collect 10 fairy wings or whatever, or you need to have 10,000 Twitter followers or something. Like those things can be verified, and I can use them to kind of set the bar that I need you to step over to get to the next level of the game. And then all of a sudden it seems like a fun thing to do, to build the reputation, to get the levels. I'm curious if any of you guys are seeing the gamification stuff pop up in your
well, if you've been following my Twitter, that's kind of what I've been talking about for a little while now. Is this is a game, and we need to make it fun, right? Like it really, I think we've been focusing a lot on the tech stack, and definitely there's a value to that. There's a lot of incredible builders that are creating some really interesting and important kind of bits and pieces of the technology that's going to create, like, basically be a part of this giant mega game. But at the end of the day, what's missing still is kind of like, how do we make it fun, right? As an incentive too, right? Because when we think about incentives, I think sometimes we think purely financial, but there's a lot of non-financial incentives, and a big piece of what makes this a big non-financial incentive, I should say, is the gamification of it, the making it desirable for someone to participate in it. Excuse me. And another, just one thing that I wanted to add in terms of like how this just kind of continues to evolve and become a much more sophisticated game is the composability of it. I think that that's hugely a big piece of what makes Web3 different and important is its composability. And so one of the questions that you asked early was, how do you all play nice with each other? I think reputation systems, or whatever they end up being called in the future, when we come up with a better name for it, is the ability to compose with all of them, where Karma and Otterspace and Orange and all of these other primitives that are being, streamed out of these applications, these platforms, are able to, that they themselves also become Lego pieces to our identity, and then unlock new levels of this DAO game.
Yeah, I love that. It feels like the game is still in alpha, and we're testing. We have to deal with all the bugs, but I'm a big fan of the the game that's being built here, and hopefully it gets there. We've got 6 minutes left. I'd like to hear closing thoughts from folks. If any of you have something bubbling on what we've been talking about that you want to say before we're out.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting you mentioned that, Humpty. In fact, Matt just have had interest with with a couple of DAOs we're working with, where they want to have this education program, right? They're like, this big DAO we're working with, they want to onboard more Web3 users. They actually wanted like a system wherein when people complete modules, the gamification was that their avatar would get like accessories. So, you would get like a hat, and then the more you finish modules, you start off with like a baby, but then you grow up to like a full adult, and then all of that. So when you just about the gamification thing, that's there. And I was just going through the chat. I think TW mentioned that how does a DAO handle an individual wanting to opt out? So I just want to say that this is all optional, right? Like at the end of the day, you as a contributor must claim all the badges that a DAO is giving you, and if you don't claim it, it's perfectly fine, right? That's something that's completely up to you. And also, if you think about it, right, like as long as you get paid by a DAO, there is a proof that you're related with them. So it's not like if you don't have these tokens, it's like you're completely separated. There's still, is a proof out there. And when it comes to your work, well, of course, my personal life, now those reputations on chain would be scary. But when it comes to my work, yeah, I don't mind sharing it with others.
Yeah, maybe I can also jump in, because I also saw there was a lot of chat about negative reputation and consent in the chat thread. So with Otterspace badges, we built consent into the protocol itself. So the badges actually cannot be airdropped. It's impossible for them to be airdropped. They require a signature, at least a signature from the recipient before they are minted to a wallet. And we did that exactly to avoid non-consensual association with organizations or with ideas or badges. So I think that's something important to keep in mind. And then on the point of negative reputation, I think it's an interesting area. It's a bit dicey, so we're avoiding that. And like I said, everything is consented. So you could create a negative badge, but the recipient has to approve receiving it, so it wouldn't really have the desired effect. But I do think that there is a use case for negative reputation related to things like defaulting on a loan and things like that. But I guess that's maybe something that is for someone else to solve, because we're kind of not going anywhere near that.
Yeah, it's like DarkYelp needs to appear, perhaps, because if it's possible, it seems like it'll happen. And so we're kind of over here on the positive side of reputation with consent and transparency and being able to keep things hidden and things like that. But it's technically possible for me to airdrop something onto somebody, and if other people, if my DarkYelp had the reputation that it was meaningful, then that could become meaningful to somebody. As Emily said, when that's perceived by somebody, then your reputation can still follow.
We saw that with Tornado.cash, right? The U.S. government perceives you to be sanctioned if you have this transaction in your wallet. I guess that's a way for them to perceive something negative about you based on an unconsented transaction. So I actually think that consent is something we need to think about in all types of tokens, not just non-transferable tokens.
Right.
So I think that's a big area for us to keep thinking about.
Yeah, the other side of the coin. Keep an eye on that too. I didn't think Tornado.cash was a reputation system, but apparently that's how
No, it's not. I just mean that
No,
like your
I'm making a
reputation is
joke.
negative. Oh, okay, sorry.
Right, like the government decided that it was.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Sorry.
Okay, a couple minutes. I had a question I was going to ask. Call to action for Daoists, people who are wanting to get more involved in this. I guess we just roll to your sites and make accounts, or, does anybody want to give a takeaway? Like what should people walk away from with this that they could use to improve their Web3 experiences as collaborators?
Yeah. Firstly, I just wanted to thank you and DAO House for putting together this event. I think it's really important to have these conversations, especially as contributors who are building out this technology, right? I think being able to come together, and think through some of these challenges and see where each of us is kind of the lens from which we're looking at it, and seeing where there's the opportunities to co-build and collaborate, I think are really valuable, because it's only then, in my personal opinion, that we can actually take the next steps with this technology. Otherwise, it's going to be a fractured universe of reputation, which is going to be pretty meaningless, in my opinion. So I would love to continue having these conversations. One of the initiatives that I started to that point is I tweeted out a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week ago, I don't remember now, but basically said, there's this space of identity and reputation that is growing, but the conversations are being had in kind of siloed environments away from the public. And I was trying to find a way to bring people together to share the conversations and just kind of being able to like keep us abreast of everything that's out, as best as possible, everything that's happening, at least the more meaningful kind of parts of it, and then to be able to then open up the opportunities for collaboration. And the first thing that I did was I created a Twitter community where these builders are coming together and they're just tweeting within themselves, within that community, which is open to the public to look at. And it's called W3ID Club, I think. I'll share the link later in the chat channel. But basically, anybody who's interested, who's building in this, please join it. That's the first step to just having this conversation as a group of builders, so that, again, we can start looking to see how we can together educate and onboard everyone to participate in a richer DAO experience.
Right on. Yeah, be sure to drop that link. We're 1 minute over. I just I like ending groups with just one thing I'm taking away. So just as an individual, so Emily, Mahesh, Imphi, and Humpty, just one sentence. What's one thing you're taking from this conversation that you're going to carry with you going forward? Start with Mahesh.
Right. The one thing I'm taking away is the projects in the space. A lot of everyone working here. It's incredible, and I think we will solve a lot of the problems we are facing fairly soonish. I feel very optimistic about it.
Thank you. Emily?
Yeah, I would echo that. I think I'm excited to see so many others thinking about the same things and kind of puzzling over the same problems. And yeah, I'm also optimistic about our ability to collaborate and realize the potential that we see.
Thanks. And Imphi?
I think this question I'll be able to better answer at the end, because like even Isaac's talk was like so eye-opening. It's like, when he spoke about the UI and the smart contract and the difference. So I'm feeling like there's just so much that's happening in DAOs that is, in fact, even bigger than everything we're working on, like reputation and all, like just, speaks to the very, existence of DAOs. So I feel like, that is something that needs to be tracked more closely, because there's no point building these applications if you don't know what all's going on. And with Isaac's talk, with DAOcember so far, I'm like, okay, there's a lot that, we need to stay aware of while we're building.
Thanks, Imphi. We'll call that good. Dekan, what you got?
Cool. Thanks guys for coming on. My call to action was like, can we as a community agree on like that if non-consensual badges are actually just spam, and that we're not solving that problem right now. I thought that was a good point. But anyways, yeah, thank you guys for joining. We have a little break until our next talk, which is with Protocol Guild, and the kind of core Ethereum builders DAO, the people that are doing low level research and